Paul Flynn is here, the former Dublin footballer. How are you? Yeah. Have you made peace with that?
I have, yeah. Thanks very much. It doesn't sound right just yet, but it will, in time. So
yourself and John O'Shea and Ruby Walsh, quite the day. Did you all coordinate that? Was that like a
we're WhatsApp?
Right, lads, let's go.
Yeah. So my mum was giving out last night that Ruby was stealing my thunder. So.
And I saw Alan Brogan on Twitter going, "Don't worry about it. Leo Messi's going to steal everybody's thunder" last night. So, what was the decision? Like, why now? What was the final impetus for you?
It was something that I've been kind of playing around my mind since the end of last season. Actually, before I entered into the championship last year, after getting the back surgery, I was like, right, this is the last phase of my career. I was quite comfortable with that, and then I played well, and that kind of, says to you, maybe I can go one more year. And then people were telling me, everybody I was speaking to were saying, oh, but for the year that's in it, you got to go back, and give it one more year. And if you get a good pre-season under your belt and a good league campaign, it'll leave you in good stead for a championship. And yeah, I tried it. I said I'll go hard, and I didn't miss any training sessions through my back, but I just couldn't push myself as hard as I once could, and I couldn't reach the levels that I once could, and I struggled with that.
In terms of sprinting, or in terms of like the load, or the
it's really repeat sprintability, and that's kind of the thing. Like, could I sprint? Yeah, pace was never my kind of underlying strength, but it was okay. But it was the ability to make 10 or 12 sprints in a row. To get down and to cover the fence, but also get back up and be able to kick a point. And I struggled with that, and that's just there's part of that. It comes with age, but also with 2 surgeries in 3 years, they build.
Was they the same surgery? Was it the same thing?
No, I got groin surgery the year before. So
right. And what was the back injury?
The back injury it's called a lumbar spine discectomy. So it's a literally. I actually was playing the first club game last year in February, and I went to run. I couldn't run. I had no power in my left leg, and I got this thing called, my foot went actually quite palsy. Right, it's called foot drop. Right, whereby there's a nerve that impinges on a nerve canal right at the top of your left leg, around the glute area. And the nerve just wasn't working, so the foot then loses its power. So I went in to see a specialist the next day, and he operated me the next day.
Right. Okay. So it's as quick as that.
Disc, yeah.
Right.
He said you can't leave that for long because you can do permanent damage to the nerve, and but I got a full recovery from it. Thank God, yeah. Yeah,
so those combined surgeries actually took away one of the key parts of your game, which was that ability it was the motor and the engine and the ability to keep going for the whole game.
Yeah, there's some guys, I'd say this fairly openly, that their game is built on skill. You know what I mean? My game and the position that I played was attritional, and it was built on the ability to be able to, make those repeated sprints, and that's why, through my probably best years, I had no injuries. I was able to kind of train and push my body to limits and above where it even wanted to go itself, and that allowed me then to put in the performances that I could, and as I say, it was built on conditioning and physicality.
Can we go back then to the bit where you where that penny dropped with you? Like, were you a mainstay of underage Dublin teams, like under 16, minor? Like, you knew at that stage that you were in that conversation anyway?
I was in the conversation. I wasn't the mainstay, like 16s, minors. First year minor, I didn't play with Dublin. I played second year, but I started midfield. First year 21s, I was kind of periphery. Second year, I started midfield. So, but I wasn't the best player on the team. But actually funny, and from our 21s team, not many players did make the transition, bar myself and maybe Michael Savage, Vincent's goalkeeper. I probably came onto the Dublin panel, and again I was very raw. And actually, Kieran Duff, who was Fingallian's man, he actually was a selector at the time, and he called me up for some squad games early doors. And again, I made some big plays, and not scores. I remember, I caught a few lads with some shoulders, right? That was the kind of thing that stood me out from the crowd at that point, that I was physical and aggressive.
What stage of the season is this? Is this was Brown Cup, or?
This was actually, when I was calling to the Dublin senior team, it was in April of '07. So they were just finishing their league campaign, and going into championship, and I didn't play any championship that year. I made the bench once or twice, and that was kind of where I was at. And I was.
Were you delighted with that at that stage?
Delighted with that at that stage, you know. And
where were you making the bench? Is this the midfielder, or like had they?
I actually didn't know. I just ran around for the warm up and ran up and down the sideline, and I was like, you know, chuffed to bits. You know, I got a jersey and I brought it home, and you know, that was elation. Like, that was kind of what you wanted. You're growing up. You're giving so much to the game with the goal of one day, you know, lying out in Croke Park, and you know, we don't get an opportunity to be professionals. We are in an amateur sport, and that's the pinnacle, is to play in Croke Park, you know, with your county jersey, whatever that is.
And at that stage, I think, is that the year the Pat Gilroy comes in, that summer?
No, he was so I had 2 years with Pillar, 7 and 8, 2007, 2008. And then
Did you play in 08?
I played in 08. Yeah. Played my first championship game was against Westmeath, and I was taken off at half time in front of 80. It was when 80,000 people used to go to the first Leinster championship game, and I was taken off. Just the noise, the sun, the heat. I just caught me, and I was chronic, and I just got
playing 10.
Playing 10, yeah. So. And then when Pat Gilroy came in, I was really worried, because I was like, new manager, don't really know, doesn't know much about me, didn't have a great year in 08, and I'll never forget, he rang me when he was probably announced in around September or October. He rang me in November, and he was like, I've got a lot of faith in you. I really want to, I want you to be in the team. I want to work with you, and he gave me such an uplift without even seeing me in one training session, and that I'll never forget it, because from then he stayed true to his words. Did he start me every game? No, but he helped me develop, as a player and even a person off the pitch as well.
Had you committed at that stage to the conditioning that you ultimately end up doing? Like, did you realise that was going to be something that you needed to do to separate yourself from your rivals to get the jersey in the first place?
Yeah, like, I knew we were going through a kind of a phase where the game was changing, and the half forward line was this position that was, not all the forwards worked hard. Like today, if you don't work hard as a forward, you don't play. Yeah. Whereas back then it was like, we'll get a 10 and a 12 who'll do the donkey work. Really, that was the role. And Dooher did it for years for Tyrone, and like a great successful team. Galvin did it, and they were the guys you're looking at. Danny Hughes from Down would have done it in 2010, and that's kind of what you were looking at, and you were basing your game off. And but you had to have that. That was if you didn't have the fitness levels to do those runs, you weren't able to play that position, and you just then had to layer on, and that's what I would have concentrated a lot on, was the skills.
Yeah, so how did that happen? Because like, when you said your game wasn't based on skills, I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because certainly fans of every other county realise how brilliant you were kicking points from both sides of the field, from the 40 and beyond. So obviously that was something you got really good at some point. When did that happen?
Well, like, if you're playing club football, like, you're probably always, I would have seen myself as a good kicker, and then you go into county and you might make a number of kick passes that go astray, or shots that you're not executing, and you had to work on that. And when I was in DCU, interestingly, I lived with Michael Murphy for 4 years, and I really do feel that it was a kind of a turning point. We learned a lot from one another, I'd say. But we used to go out and take our spare time between lectures and stuff and go kicking. And he was one of the best ball strikers, from the minute he came onto the scene as a 17-year-old for Donegal. Yeah. And we would have spent a lot of time working on it. And also, Bernard Brogan would have been kind of a guy who would have taken me out with Pat Gilroy, actually, out to DCU, just the three of us, And you're in the county football Ireland like that, that was difficult as well, but it was very much appreciated. Where they're actually we're going back to basics here about how to kick your points, and we did it, and we worked on it, and I just put the hours in, and used to get a bag of balls every day I wasn't training, and go out and just keep working on it, and then I found myself, I just had confidence, and once you have that, then when you actually find you get yourself into more shooting positions when you have the confidence to take the score, you know, so.
Because you keep running because you know it's going to arrive.
You get there, and then you want to get on the end of scores, where when you don't have the confidence, you're kind of saying, I'll just pull back here, and I'll, if the ball turns over, I'll make a tackle or whatever, but if you've done the practice, you're like, I'm getting into a scoring position, and you're setting yourself targets of maybe getting 4 scoring opportunities in a game and executing 3 of them, or whatever your KPIs are.
Was there anything in particular that you learned from Murphy or from Brogan, or was it just pure repetition?
their ball striking was just, you know, even like they didn't measure it on outcome or a score, like they'd like measure it on how they struck the ball, and that was kind of around the process of kicking it. And Bernard was big on that, and we you know, we break it down into kind of 3 stages where you have the ball, you get composure. It was a big thing for me where, you know, I might work at 100 miles an hour to get the ball. And then I wouldn't bring myself back to maybe around 85% to get the good execution. I'd be kicking at 100% and a bit out of control. So that was a big kind of learning curve. And then once you get that, you can consistently get the good strikes. And if you get good strikes, you know, more often than not, the ball will go where you want it to go.
So part of this is all Michael Murphy's fault, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah, he sent me a lovely text yesterday. That was a lovely part of yesterday, in fairness. The text that you get from people, you know, that had an impact on your career all the way through. And I suppose, you know, you'll know this, Kenny, like when you're in the middle of it, you're not looking back. You're not like, oh, that guy helped me. And it's probably like, not that you're not thinking that then when people helped you, you know, you do move on a bit, and but I have a nice day of reflection yesterday, and you do have gratitude for those guys who kind of helped you all along the way.
You kind of need to be selfish and cutthroat to try and make the team, and everybody who's helping you is helping you along the way. But I guess that's the joy of a retirement, is that you can actually think back. And when you were thinking back yesterday, who were the people that you kind of thought, yeah, those were stages along the way that were really important?
Yeah, Dully, like, you know, it's funny, like Kieran Duff, like, you know, to bring me on. I remember, like, funnily, like, I was out, like, on a night out until like the middle of the morning, and at 8 o'clock the next day, Dully rings me and he says, there's a game on down in Lusk, would you come down and play? And my first Dublin game, like, and I went down and yeah, literally it was just home kind of, and I went down and it was at 2 o'clock, a couple hours sleep, and I scored 2 goals, right? And I was absolutely chronic, but I scored 2 goals. Don't ask me how I did, but I didn't get called in that time. No, it's gone. Will it still work without it?
Yeah, we'll get it.
So he was obviously, because he was a legend around the club, and then like, you know, people like Pat Gilroy, you know, someone that I like still look to as a guy who's had a big influence on my life. Niall Moyna in DCU helped me as well, and Mick Bohan, who would have been my coach in DCU as well,
who coaches the women's football team at the minute.
Yeah, and you can see that the impact that he's had on that team, whereby their skill level has, you know, increased something fierce, because he does a lot of work. Actually takes some learning from Barcelona, where they do a lot of work with 2 balls.
Yeah.
So
there's some of that stuff on YouTube actually that's worth looking at. You can see the women's team training with the 2 balls, and it's kind of I'd never seen it before, but Tommy obviously is a bit obsessed about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to bring Meath Hill Senior, you know, and you can see the benefits of it. You can see the slickness of their passing really quickly. So when you were at DCU, that was when.
Yeah, 4 years doing 2 balls exercises, and it was like, you know, it gives you such balance and coordination, and you have to keep on working on it. But in particular on my weak side, because you think about your soloing with your left hand. If you have another ball in your hand, you have to drop it with your left hand.
Yeah.
And you have to kick, you have to strike. And a lot of people like drop with their right hand, and it takes your balance. So, and you know, it's just something new. It's kind of building your motor kind of skills in a different way, you know.
Were you obsessive?
Yeah, I was, you know, and probably to its detriment in some regards. Like, you know, I remember having good conversations with players about it, but you have to be, you really do have to be, you know, the athletes, the Olympians will always talk about single-mindedness, and, you know, just pure focus on you and your goals. And I would have had a lot of that, you know, and it probably, I won't say it peters out, but you then come to a stage where you can't do it any longer, especially as an amateur, where you have to concentrate on, you know, on your life off the pitch. But like, I was very obsessive about my game, and, you know, I actually, probably looking back even yesterday and hearing some things, you know, I never rated myself as highly as probably other people did, you know, that kind of way. And I was always looking, saying, even my best games, I was probably dissecting it and saying, geez, you know, how did I make that pass? You know, why didn't I, you know, execute that score?
Well, where did the joy come from then? Because there must have been loads along the way, right?
Yeah, the joy comes from the camaraderie with the team, and winning as a team, and winning. You know, I always loved winning real dogfights. You know, that was kind of something for me. Or when you're really faced with adversity. And I think it was 09 or 10. 09 or 10, we played Kildare in a Leinster Championship semi-final. We had a man sent off early doors. and Kildare had us on the ropes, and we just got over the line. And it was one of those monumental games for us, like, you know, and we had a lot of those early doors in Leinster that were just, you know, games that you remember where you're up against it and you deliver. And that's the joy in team sport for me anyway.
Speaking of the single-mindedness and the goals that you'd have in mind, what sort of goals were they?
They kind of year on year they'd change. Like if I'm going into 2010 season, I remember I knew I was going to get opportunities to start, and it was all about kind of improving my kicking. Was I thinking about individually winning an All-Star at that point? No, I wasn't, because I was so far, you know, I was just thinking about getting into the starting setup. But I do remember in 2011 I kind of started setting myself, you know, more detailed goals, and, you know, that year it was all about kind of winning an All-Ireland and winning an All-Star. And that was funny, like we used to discuss that, myself and Murph as well, where it wasn't all just about kind of like, you know, skills, but we talk a lot about the game and what we wanted to achieve. And in 10, neither of us had an All-Ireland or an All-Star, let's say, and we'd say, you know, if we got one on one, you know, you retire a happy man, you know. But then we did get that in the next 2 years. We both won an All-Ireland and an All-Star, and you know, obviously you get greedy then and you want to keep going, you know. But
I think Aidan Walsh was in that house as well, was he?
He was, yeah.
So that was 10, 11, 12, all in that one house.
Yeah.
Not bad.
And he was it 12? In 12, the three of us were living together, and the three of us won All-Stars, and we were quite friendly, the three of us. So
Good night that night, I'd say.
Yeah, it was a good night, yeah.
Good week.
So let's talk about some of the All-Irelands, and we should talk about the Donegal game as well. The first All-Ireland is obviously, in retrospect, the important one, because that starts everything else. You nearly missed that game, the final, is that right?
Yeah, like we played Donegal in the semi-final, and I pulled my hamstring the last kick of the game, and I'll never forget it. Like the lads, you know, there was big celebrations that night. There was a 3-week gap between the game, and everybody was going out, and there was just such elation to reach a final, which was a milestone for us. Even Pat always spoke about just getting to a final, and that was his thing, you know. And we, you know, there was a sense of we needed to blow off a bit of steam, and I couldn't obviously go out of the state. I iced my leg. That 3 weeks were like, you know, looking back now, if you talk about obsession, it was crazy. Like I wouldn't let anyone around me speak negatively. You know, everything was optimistic. We were talking about positive mindset. I was drinking, you know. What was the stuff we were drinking? Anything I could eat that was aligned to decreasing inflammation or was going to help speed up recovery. I spent, you know, every day going out to this hydrotherapy bath in the morning, in lunchtime, and in the afternoon. It was just, you know, everything was centered around it. And
waking up in the middle of the night to ice it, that kind of stuff?
Waking up in the middle of the night to ice it, that happened. Like for 48 hours I didn't sleep really. I just cycled to get ice to get the inflammation down. And I actually probably did myself no favour, because I got myself back in 2 weeks, and then I was doing a fitness test a week out from the game, and I pushed myself too hard, and I remember feeling something small and saying, you know, I just got giddy, you know, that kind of way.
Yeah,
like, I was just saying, like, I had a week, you know, but I was just...
Should have taken it, yeah.
And I didn't know anybody, like, we reckoned it was still okay, but then I didn't do anything for a week, and then I had to do a fitness test the Saturday before the game. I remember I was chasing Declan Lally, and I got this kind of injection in it where it was slightly like an anaesthetic around the area on both sides of the small tear, so that it numbed the whole area, and I got it very, very heavily strapped. And yeah, I was okay that day, but I do remember going home, like, and the pain afterwards was excruciating when the kind of the anaesthetic kind of wore off. And I actually rang Pat that night and I said, Pat, I'm out, I can't play, like, you know. And I was crying, like, you know, that's where, this is the emotion that game would have brought for us, like, you know. But he said, no, you'll be okay, you'll be grand, right?
That's old school, isn't it?
That's old school. But he wasn't old school, and the funny thing was, but he was still, he had this belief system that I could play, and, like, you know, I remember doing the warm-up and I went to him.
Well, maybe that's what you needed to hear, Paul. I'm saying, obviously, I'm not kind of talking him down there and saying old school. Maybe knew you that well. You're talking about having that positive mindset around you during that period of your rehabilitation. Maybe even that was him in his own head saying, this is what he needs. He needs to hear this. I need to tell him this. You know, I need to convince him. He needs to hear these words from me. So in terms of that type of positive psychology from the manager, even implanting that in your head, no, don't worry about it. You're going to be all right. You'll be grand.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like he had a great way of playing my mind. Like, you know, he was he had a real influence on me. So that kind of, you know, he probably knew what he was at. And I did the warm up, I remember, and I actually went to him at the warm up, and I said to him, Pat, just make sure this guy's warming up on the sideline because I feel this is going to pop. But I didn't play well in that final, but I got 47 minutes, and the biggest impact I had in that game was coming off and letting Kev McLennan come on. And he came on and he obviously, you know, did what he did. So.
It's impossible, really. I mean, you would have had, I had a hamstring, forced hamstring, like little tear, probably grade 1, in my 30s actually, very late on in my career. But it was so debilitating. I mean, you're talking about 2-3 week rehab. It's really impossible for me. You can't. But that you're talking about that explosion at a pace which you needed over distance and that kind of constant repetition, hamstring related. It's almost impossible. It's that big explosion when you decide, right, I'm going to go. You just haven't got confidence. You almost got to lean into it. You're kind of pretend you got to lean into it. It takes a bit of time to get the speed up, which, like you're saying, is almost impossible. That kind of explosive nature of the game. But it's fair play because it's a mental.
Sure.
You know it's not right. It's not 100%, but it's kind of you got to play mind games with yourself. You got to convince yourself. Almost got to manage yourself a little bit through the game. But it's a horrible feeling with that type of injury.
Yeah. To talk briefly about the Donegal game, because it's also a kind of a seminal sliding doors moment for this Dublin team, and that the style changes afterwards. What a great game! I mean, I don't know if you can appreciate that now, but like that first half that you played was sensational, and the first 25 minutes were sensational. I mean, what do you remember that game?
Like that's 2014, arguably, and I say this a lot, like was my favourite season playing Gaelic football. And I tell you why, because we nearly, I felt, changed the game, right? We were probably in the sense that we were playing full press, right? Like there was no sweepers, there was all out attack. And our motto was just hunt them down, get the ball back and get it over the bar. And we'd hunt them, we'd press up on kickouts, we'd press up everywhere in the pitch. And in fairness to Donegal, they used it to our disadvantage. And in that first 25 minutes, we had them pinned in. Like, you know, our motto was like, if they've two sweepers, just press up on them. They do no sweepers, and we just go at them and back ourselves man to man. And that's exciting. If you're playing football like that and that's your attitude, like it just kind of seeps into your training, it seeps into your mindset. It really was aggressive and, you know, just exciting. I see a lot of it in the Premiership now where teams are pressing up, and like the Premiership has turned into, or any like soccer matches now at the moment, like it's so exciting to watch when you see that. So anyway, then first 25 minutes we were kicking points from everywhere. We realised they were going to have men kind of blocking up the D, and we had practiced a lot of long range shooting, and they all went over. A couple of key moments where we goal chances that weren't executed, and then they went down and caught us in the sucker punch, and with a goal, which was a bit of luck in the first goal, but then they just kind of built on it, like they were very good at doing. And then the second half they just blew us out, so. But again, it was still a very enjoyable year, and it was a big loss. It changed our whole attitude to the game. We then kind of became a little bit more kind of cautious or conservative at the back. Smarter, probably, really, it was
that's
a little
pity,
bit naive.
Right? Because if you won that, then everybody would have copied you. Like, that was the way. Everybody copied Donegal because they won that game, and then Kerry obviously out Donegal in the final.
That's right, yeah. So.
And then we had a couple of years of bleakness.
Yeah, and I think it's coming. I think it'll come full cycle. You see, that's I was in the football, there was a lot of tippy-tack football for a while, and wasn't that nice to watch. I'm not too sure. Now they're going full press, and City are doing it, and Liverpool are doing it, and it is exciting to watch. So hopefully, the football this year, you'll see teams like Mayo will do that. All right, they'll go full press on you, and will they get guys back? Yeah, they will, but they'll press you, and then they'll transition back, and that's what we hope to see now in more of the teams this year.
Paul, it's really interesting that you say you felt you were on the very cusp of changing football in that 2014 semi-final. Was that kind of an overall view within the camp throughout your years, that you are part of something greater here, that football is at a crossroads and we can be part of the positive or we can be part of the negative side of this?
I'm not too sure why we would have labelled it like that, but we did know that this was an exciting brand of football, and you kind of just I don't know what any trailblazers think about kind of what the impact it's going to leave, but I do feel that would have been trailblazing, and that people would have followed suit, and because at the time people were talking about the fact that we were going full press in a time when other teams were looking at going the complete opposite. So maybe I'm maybe I'm off the mark there, but I do feel that we could have, changed things. And
yeah, but Paul, don't you feel as if you're making the point about that kind of full press, and you said we backed ourselves man to man all over the pitch, but that's got to be key to the tactic. You got individual players of such high quality that you do back yourself 1v1 all over the pitch. Yeah, if you make, say, comparisons, say Manchester City, you've mentioned there, why don't every team high press Manchester City up the pitch man to man? When you go man to man against Manchester City, you've got to be prepared to leave yourself man to man 3v3
with De Bruyne,
at the back.
Aguero,
Sterling and Sane split across the pitch, big distances between your three defenders. Very few teams' defensive setups are going to back themselves 1v1 against play. So I think the individual qualities, you back yourself 1v1 all over the pitch. Yeah, absolutely. You go high press 1v1 all over the pitch. But that's a compliment. That's how clear how good you were. You had confidence in yourselves in those 1v1 situations. That wouldn't be the case, I'd imagine, inferior counties. Like, you wouldn't have that kind of talent pool.
Was that Connolly's best year as well?
Yeah, and we were both wing forwards, and we were actually buzzing off one another. We just had such a kind of a good relationship on the pitch. But he was shooting them over that day. He scored 5 points that day, and
I think in the first 20 minutes. I
think he got one in the. I got 4 in the first half. He got 4, and he got 1 in the second half. One of our very rare points, I think, in the second half that day. But
at half-time, was there panic in the dressing room? Did you kind of feel or was there? Because I remember at half-time thinking, this is they'll get this in the second half, because they always do. But
in fairness, with Jim, I've never had any panic in the dressing room, and that's that just was never an occurrence. He just brought this calmness and deliberate approach to everything he did, and which was great, and that seeped into the team. You could feel that calmness, and I've had different managers who you could be roaring and screaming, and it riles you up, and it just wasn't Jim's approach, and we responded that way, and still do.
Yeah, you can see that in the Mayo games when you have to chase a late score. There is actually still calmness in the crowd from the Dublin supporters, because they know that the team is calm, and you just work the opportunity and eventually dig out a result.
You mirror what you see on the line, even, and Jim would never kind of. He never showed any kind of emotion, and then you become that kind of process-driven team,
Was there ever a moment where you did panic?
Through Jim's
not through Jim, because clearly he clearly doesn't. But as a player, when you're in the middle of it, say in any of those Mayo games in the middle of the white heat, when you eventually win, and I guess as time goes on, you're not going to panic as much. But was there ever a moment where you thought, God, this thing might?
So many. For me, I remember when we played Kerry in 2015. I think it was in 15, and they got a goal. Do you remember in the first half, or in the first 10 minutes we played? You should remember this one, right?
The game in the rain.
Sorry?
The game in the rain.
No, not the game in the rain.
2016, so the semi-final, yeah.
And early doors, Kerry got, I think, 2 goals. And I remember being rattled, and a kick out came my wing. I didn't win it, but I got the next ball, and I went to kick a crossfield ball to Dermo. And I was rattled, and I miskicked it, but it still got to him, right? And this was pure luck. And then he went and he took on Tomas O'Shea down the wing, and he kind of turned him inside out, came in on his right foot, and he took a shot, and he miskicked it too, and it came up short, and Mannion punched it into the net. I don't really remember that goal, and it was such a lucky goal, right? Mannion was brilliant, and he reacted to it as a young lad, but we got back into the game then, and then you kind of settled you. But there's so many moments in games like that, especially when you play Mayo, where you feel rattled, because in fairness to the Mayo fans, they just roar the house down, and whenever you played Mayo, it was, I always felt that there was more Mayo fans there than Dublin fans, and that creates a swell of pressure when they get on top, because they do come at you in waves where they kick 3 and 4 and 5 points in a row, and so moments like that you do remember being under pressure, and you're trying to kind of catch yourself and get yourself back into the game.
Were Mayo your biggest rivals over that period then, because they had that ability in games to rattle you? The Kerry thing seemed like it wasn't a one-off, but
that was 2013 by the way, just in case I get corrected.
2013, yeah. Sorry, thank you. Yeah,
which was that when?
Because Tomas was playing. That was the 2 early goals, and then 2016 was 2 goals before half time.
That's right. Yeah.
I can confirm Kerry were also panicked at that point. It wasn't just Dublin.
But there was like that's right. Early doors, there were some serious battles with Kerry, you know, like and I remember in '09 when they bet us, and then which was Pat's first year, and then we kind of got over the line in 11. So it kind of came in ways where it was Kerry initially, and then it became morphed into, you know, obviously in the middle of that Donegal, great rivalry, and then Mayo, kind of was all the way through it too. But I was saying, like, I think to someone yesterday, like I remember when we started with, especially with Pat, our team that we were like targeting was Tyrone, you know, and that was the team that, you know, they would won the 3 All-Irelands, and they were phenomenal, and so it kind of comes in different phases, you know.
They'd beaten Pillar's team really handily in a game in Croker in the rain as well.
08, yeah.
And that was just a straightforward win for Tyrone, which should, I presume, from a Dublin perspective, they think should never happen.
Yeah. So
to go from there to the point where the team is now on the cusp of 5 in a row is pretty amazing. What happened?
Yeah, just to put your finger on one thing is impossible. Like, you know, I think it was just, you know, a number of things. First of all, you know, you'd a phase where Jim was involved in a number of 21s teams, and Desi Farrell was involved in a number of minor teams and 21s teams that were ran really well and with really good talent, and they were that talent was nurtured, and there was just wave after wave of really good players coming through. You know, every year you come back at pre-season for a period there, and there was a new young lad, you know, who was as good as the last one that came in, and you know, to add that to a team that's kind of after winning an All-Ireland already, you know, was just phenomenal. And their attitude as well, like, was just something that they came in with this attitude that, you know, we want to win, and you know, we know how to win. And whereas, you know, when I was coming into the senior panel, I'd never won like anything.
Just glad to be here, like,
glad to be here, and that changes everything. But things happened as well, like Kilmacud won an All-Ireland club, and Vincent's won an All-Ireland club, and they all built onto this kind of idea that we can actually, you know, we can do better than win the Leinster or getting to a quarter-final. And you layer onto that, like, you know, I always felt that Pat changed, you know, our focus, you know, and gave us this kind of, you know, the foundation at the back. And then Jim layered onto that again, you know, with this, you know, ultra, you know, professional setup, mindset, and benchmarking ourselves and measuring ourselves and against, you know, the best. And
Jason Sherlock's influence in terms of, and working with a basketball coach as well, you could see in that Tyrone game 2 years ago now, that you had control of possession for the entire thing. It was like, it was a bit of cat and mouse almost. And then last year there was a stat that Eamon Donoghue had this in the Irish Times, that Dublin haven't even attempted a shot outside the 45 from play in the Senior Football Championship. So the style morphed from that Donegal game where we can kick point outside if there are men inside, to we're just going to keep the ball and run the clock down and be very surgical with our approach.
And that's the evolution of the game now, and that's what kind of it. And like when you measure, you know, scoring percentages, lads are gonna, like, you know, be careful about what shots they take.
Yeah.
You know, and that these are like the same statistics that are being measured in any county. And when you measure wides as clearly as you do, and you know, I always wonder when I watch hurling, like, you know, they just shoot on sight, you know, and I actually don't know what the conversion rates are a lot of the time, but where in football it is, you know, they do try to make sure that they're creating good shots, you know, and that was one thing that we would always go after. And if you're playing against a packed defence, you have to bring it wide, and you have to bring it, you know, bring it in deep and try to get it across the pitch, you know, and things like that. But you have to just create a good scoring opportunity. That's ultimately what the aim is.
2 final quick questions that we wanted to ask you. Was the toughest player you ever marked? Toughest opponent, I guess that is?
I hate these questions.
Yeah, it's a tough question because, like, you know, there's so many, right? But I actually, you know, and I say this, and people say, oh, well, like, that's a cop-out. But, like, we have that many internal games, you know, that, like, I'm sick going up against James McCarthy in training, like, you know. And that was, like, you know, week in, week out. And for years we were going battling each other. And then it kind of changed, and I'd be going up against Jack. And when you're getting a bit older and you have to go take on Jack, you know, that's just, Jack's pace was just, you know, so. But, like, you know, there's been some great battles in that through the years with Colin Boyle. You know, I remember famously, I said this to you when we did that thing in Vincent's a couple of weeks ago. In '09, one of my first games, I was Mike McCarthy came back to play for Kerry, and he hadn't played all season, I don't think, and they rolled him out for a game, and I thought, like, you know, I was going to roast him, and he absolutely annihilated me. And so there's been great battles against different people along the way, but we've, you know, yeah. you miss them battles. That's the thing, you know. That's the thing you probably can't, you know, gauge. You know, that white heated battle when you're in the midst, you're going toe to toe with somebody, and you know they're as fit as you, as strong as you, and you have to just kind of find a gap and, you know, use your head to try and find a shot, get into the space to find a shot, and try to track someone down. You know, them little things are the parts of the game that you really miss.
Will you be able to play club? Is your injury situation okay enough that you will be able to play club?
Yeah, no, definitely. I was actually, you know, I'm looking forward to that, because there's a load of games coming up now in the summer, and, you know, will I be able to train? Like, it's the intensity difference between club and county is really predicated around training, right? And the games, you know, the games are the games, and you'll always push yourself to the limit, but be pushed in training, and when you go to training and you have to perform, otherwise you're not going to play. That kind of coliseum or, you know, environment, you know, you just have to be on the top of your game all the time. Where hopefully with club I can manage my back a little bit, because I do plan on getting the handicap down as well in golf.
Yeah, so. Well, best of luck with that. Look, we will obviously talk to you about the GPA at some point, because you know, you have to leave now to go to do some day job stuff.
Day job stuff, yeah.
And there's loads to get into in that, but we figured that you know, I think that when you were talking about maybe not appreciating the quality of your own career, you'd 4 All-Stars in a row. You're the only player outside Kerry in history to do that. It's an incredible level of achievement and an incredible level of sustained consistency. Certainly everybody in Leinster and everybody around the rest of the country is going, whew, thank God he's gone. But like, it's an amazing career. Like, I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, I did. I loved every second. That's the thing, you know. And the friends you make in sport, you know, are special. And I was married there a couple of years ago, and just you had like a little family pocket of family here, you know, and then you've got some of your friends, and then you have footballers everywhere, like, you know, and it's just crazy. So that's one of the key things that you'd always have, you know, is that friendship.
Well, listen, congratulations on a great career. Thanks very much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, guys.